Okay, welcome to the webinar on foreign exchange and deceased estates. My name's Jacqui Brauman. I'm the Principal Solicitor at TBA Law, and I've got Tim Smith with me. Hi Tim, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here today.
You're really welcome. So we've still got a few people coming in. So as they come in, they'll just hear us as we go, I suppose. But what I wanted to say up front is that we'll do questions at the end. So we won't actually have the chat box up on the screen to be able to see those questions, and I'll come back and check those at the end. So if you do have questions throughout, we've also got the Q&A box or the chat box. So you can put them in either place and I'll check them towards the end. But hopefully we answer a lot of the questions as we go.
Yeah, that's good.
So I obviously do a lot of work with deceased estates. So when someone passes away, the executor will come to me to help them with the administration. A lot of people are only executor maybe once in their life, if at all. And so there's a lot of unknowns for them about what their roles and responsibilities are. And then I met Tim actually through a mutual colleague who said, you know, what are you doing in terms of foreign beneficiaries? And to be honest, I wasn't probably giving it the relevant weight that I should have been giving. So that's what we want to talk about today, is giving people the information that they need as executors. So executors have duties and obligations to make sure that the will is followed, that they insure and protect any assets, and that they pay any debts, and then they distribute the estate in accordance with the will. In all of that, they also have to try and maximise the estate. So not make it worth any more than it was necessarily, but certainly not to create a situation where the beneficiaries are losing out. And I suppose this is the main point in terms of foreign beneficiaries. So firstly, where there's a foreign beneficiary, it's usually better to give them a cash legacy rather than an asset, because there are all sorts of tax complications with trying to transfer an asset to a foreign beneficiary. But then in terms of cash legacies and transferring them overseas, foreign exchange is something that I hadn't thought about before meeting Tim, in terms of trying to maximize the exchange rate, because I was just trusting my bank. But now I know not to do that. So Tim, can you tell our audience, you know, what you initially told me, particularly about how foreign exchange works through the banks and how it can be done better?
Yeah, sure, Jacqui. Look, I worked in a major bank for over 20 odd years. I've worked in foreign exchange brokerage. And one thing that has become really obvious is that when someone is either acting as an executor or sometimes even as a beneficiary of an estate, it is that one-off event. So they usually know very little about foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is a relatively dirty industry, and the less someone knows, the more a foreign exchange person feels they can actually either take advantage or get more out of the transaction, because ultimately that's where their bonuses or commissions or things of that nature come from. So I would witness people in the bank basically high-fiving because often a wills and estate lawyer such as yourself will actually act as the executor. And they'll high-five knowing that the person they're dealing with probably doesn't know too much about foreign exchange. So for the size of the transactions that are being done, often you could be doing a $3 million estate and getting the same exchange rate that someone with $10 would get, which just isn't right.
No.
So there is a big gap. Basically, I've done a bit of a rundown today. I'm going to turn the screen around so we'll explain things a little bit better. So there's my contact details there. But skipping past that, I've had a look at up to about 10 banks today on their rates, and I haven't included them all here because some of them had exactly the same rate. But basically what you're looking at is that if someone was sending 90,000 overseas, one bank would actually, if it was going in US dollars, would send 55,980, and another bank down the bottom would do $56,870. So there can be quite a gap between the prices from the banks.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely nothing compared to the prices in the wholesale market. Now,
Whoa.
some of your clients or someone watching today might be familiar with it's a term known as interbank mid, but most people know it as the rate that the newsreader reads out when they say the Aussie dollar is trading at a certain level. Some people will see it as the Google rate. They'll type in exchange rate on Google, and Google gives them a rate that not just they won't be able to get, but also the banks aren't able to get. Because the rate we've got at the top here, interbank mid, it's actually derived from the bank's wholesale rates, where they can buy and sell that money. And we're talking $50, $100 million parcels. So the rate at the top, even the banks can't actually get.
Yeah.
And that rate today, as we're talking, is 0.6594 when I did this. Which meant for 90,000, you'd be looking around 59,346. Our worst price bank was at 55,980. So obviously a fair gap there.
Yeah.
And I spoke, yes, sorry.
Where does that gap go?
That's bank profit essentially. So while the bank can't get interbank mid, their wholesale rates aren't far from it, because it's an average of wholesale buying and selling rates of multiple players in the financial markets. And I spoke to one of my panel brokers, and their rate was a bit better coming in. They're making, say, just around $1,000 compared to around that nearly 3,000 mark or so from the bank. If you flip to the other way, when people are receiving, so in the case of the inheritance, if you're receiving a $60,000 inheritance, we can see here that one bank will give you 88,000 Australian dollars. The broker will give you nearly 90,000, and interbank mid's at around that 91. So everyone needs to make money, whatever they do. And brokers and banks make money. It's just the banks generally make a bit more.
Yeah. I suppose with the Royal Commission having been around, and we're more aware of where the banks are making money. But this really didn't come out very much in the Royal Commission. Do you think with the banks trying to look at where they're going to recover their profits, that they might even try and get more out of foreign exchange? Can they do that? Is it regulated?
I don't think so, because the Treasurer came out after the Royal Commission and said that he also wanted to have a Royal Commission into bank fees. Yeah. Which first of all was the wrong terminology. He said bank fees. The bank fees to do an international money transfer is generally somewhere between $10 and $30, depending if you're doing it online or if you're going in and doing it at an actual branch. Yeah. What we're talking about here is foreign exchange margin. Now, I noticed when that call came out that a few of the banks actually tightened their margins. So they weren't from the initial Royal Commission. Yes. And they went a little bit tighter. I do believe longer term we'll probably see a little bit more transparency. And when they finally get things such as cryptocurrencies correct, which in my opinion they're totally not right at the moment what they need to be, you probably find that these things will get to be a little bit tighter. That said, since all the heat's come out of the market about the Royal Commission and no one's talking about foreign exchange margins anymore, a few of them have actually gone back to their old margins. I think one today, their margin was around 5.6%, which if you can imagine, if you inherited $1 million, that's nearly $56,000, which is just way too high.
That's right. Yep. Okay. So I suppose let's think about some examples.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple in the last year where there's been foreign beneficiaries. So most of the beneficiaries are usually in Australia, and then there's one or two of them that are overseas. Yeah. And I haven't shopped around. I've just used my own branch. So there was one where there was about 70 or 80,000 being transferred to a beneficiary in the UK. And the estate had been broken down into 4 equal shares. So that 4th share that was going overseas, she obviously got less in her hand than she could have potentially have gotten.
Yes.
And that's essentially what you're saying is shop around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the size of the amount. Some banks will negotiate, but you need to know where to go. I was in branches for 6 years, and when people ask me the question, I just print it out from the screen and go, well, no, there's the rate. I didn't even know we had an area where you could go and get better rates from.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I do. Some people engage my services to negotiate for a bank on their behalf, but only if those banks are on my banking panel, and some banks knock me back because they'd rather have a big margin than have me represent one of their clients getting a better rate. And the other way is the brokers. So I have brokers on my panel as well. But it's an interesting point you make, because I was talking to an executor once, which was a law firm, and they'd been accused basically of ripping beneficiaries off. Now, after a few questions, I figured out what they'd done, and they've never done it since, but they had an estate that had to be cut. There's $1 million estate, cut 10 equal parts, all beneficiaries in different countries around the world, but a lot of them centred in one European country.
Okay.
Now, you might recall from the slide I had briefly before that every bank has a different rate. So what this executive had done wrong is they'd sent Australian dollars. But first of all, no one in, let's pick a company, no one in Germany probably has an Australian dollar bank account. So if you're sending Australian dollars, it's going to sit in a suspense account until someone can deal with it. And sometimes we've been contacted to find out where's the money, and it's sitting in a suspense account because they don't know where to put it. The other thing is each one of the beneficiaries had a different bank who processed it at a different time of day and on a different day. So, and they were all related. So they were talking about how much they got from the estate, and they were all meant to get the same amount. So the easy solution for an executor in that instance is you need to take control and get every beneficiary the exact same rate and convert the funds here in Australia before you send it to multiple beneficiaries overseas.
Okay, that's a great point. So I suppose the first couple of points about that was, yes, I use my local branch, and the ladies in there probably don't know what they're doing in terms of exchange rate, because I'm probably the only one in the whole town that's doing it. And I only do it a couple of times a year.
And they've got so much to deal with. Like I would never slam someone who works in a branch, because they work the hardest of anyone in the bank.
They have to know so many things. But the second thing, as you say, is to do the exchange from Australian dollars under our own control rather than sending Australian dollars. So at least I haven't made that mistake. I did get the rate and bought them here and deposited them as the currency they were going to. So, but again, it was the branch who did that for me. If the branch didn't do that, I wouldn't have known otherwise.
I was standing in a queue once at my bank, and I won't mention the name, and the person said, I don't have my SWIFT code with me. And the teller just said, no worries, look, we'll send it off anyway, and if there's an issue, we'll let you know. You can't send international funds without a SWIFT code. That could have been lost for ages. So I stepped in. I don't often like to correct people in their own role, but I said, look, that would be the biggest mistake you can do. Take an extra day, get the SWIFT code, ring someone now, but if you send it without a SWIFT code, that is going to be a huge mistake.
Then another one that I had, there was only 2 beneficiaries in Australia. Majority of them were in Vietnam, and one was in Canada. So obviously different countries, really difficult to deal with the beneficiaries in Vietnam in the first place. And I suppose that's part of the struggle, isn't it? To try and get the details from a foreign speaking beneficiary in the first place too, and even work out, well, what bank do they have, and how are they even going to receive it? Because what I certainly wouldn't want to do is send checks. But again, I just used my local branch. We did them all on the same day. So I assume that the Vietnamese all got the same amount because we controlled it from our end. But then the different conversion rate from Canada, I suppose there's nothing you can do, is there, about going to different countries? Because the exchange rates will differ with different countries each day.
Yeah, they all change minute to minute, and you're talking about different currencies, and the beneficiaries wouldn't be too upset about that. Like if the Canadian person heard that someone in Vietnam got so many million dong, that can't equate to how much they got in Canadian dollars. If they just turn around and say, oh, I got millions, and didn't specify what the currency was, they might think what's going on here, but there's a massive difference between the Vietnamese dong, the Australian dollar, and the Canadian dollar. And other things come into play too, like the timing. I gave a presentation recently at the Immigration Association, and we're talking about the timing of transferring funds, which we don't always have the luxury of when it comes to an estate. But the difference between November 2012 and November 2019 was for $1 million US, the difference in Australian was 500,000 Australian dollars.
Gee.
Because in November 12, our dollar was actually worth more than the US dollar. Now it's worth a lot less. So it was the difference between 960,000 Australian and 1.46 million Australian in the matter of, say, 7 years.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about risk as well before we started, had some people jump on and record this, because you were talking about the summer we've just had here and the bushfires and the impact to our economy, and now with the coronavirus, impacting on tourism as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the timing is difficult to manage, isn't it?
It really is, because the Australian dollar is now at an 11-year low. So if you've got an Australian estate sending funds to beneficiaries overseas, they're getting less because our Australian dollar is worth less. If it was at the start of the year, you'd be getting a little bit more. The winners at the moment, if there can be winners in such a situation, are Australian beneficiaries receiving funds from overseas. Because if you're receiving funds from Europe, US, UK, anywhere across the world, because our Australian dollar is low, you're getting more Australian dollars for that inheritance. But it all depends. The US at the moment, with the virus going around, the US is being seen as quite a bit of a safe haven. So other currencies are being equally affected. Not so bad as, say, Australia and New Zealand, because China is one of our major trading partners. But all of these things are coming in and affecting our Australian dollar at the moment.
So it comes back to the risk that I spoke about at the beginning, which is that because an executor is supposed to maximise the estate for beneficiaries, the risk is if they don't, the beneficiaries jump up and down. However, as we were saying, the exchange rates go up and down, and if we were to wait 3 months from now, would it improve or would it be worse? Potentially it's worse. So I suppose, again, the moral of the story and what I'd have to advise executors is to get the professional advice, because at least they can hang their hat on that to say that they weren't negligent and they didn't just do it whatever they felt like doing. So is that something that we could come to you as well and say, should we wait a few months?
You can do it. The ultimate answer I give to everyone is, if I knew that, I'd be on a beach on a laptop making millions. No foreign exchange person really knows what's going to happen. No. The only thing I'm telling people at the moment is, if someone comes out with a virus cure in a month's time, now we're talking pandemics, they come out with a cure, then all of the selling of the Australian dollar, the sliding of the Australian dollar, should start to correct, because all of a sudden things such as trade with China, integration with China, even things like schooling, tourism, all of that will open up and be seen as a real positive for the Australian economy. But until we see that, I think the Australian dollar is going to be low for quite some time. But there's other things come into play too. I mean, Donald Trump's tweets can affect the Australian dollar majorly. No one has control on the timing of that.
No.
The one thing I would say is, when it comes to timing, whether it's an executor who is a lawyer such as yourself acting on behalf of the estate, or someone doing it on their own under advice from yourself, is always get approval from the beneficiaries. You might say, well, look, here's what we've been told's happened to the Australian dollar. There's no guarantee it's going up or down. Do you want me to send the funds now, or would you like to wait? I can wait on your instruction. I can have someone like Tim be in contact with you. put the onus on the beneficiaries themselves. And it's hard if you've got 10 beneficiaries.
That's right.
And they
In
all go,
Vietnam.
some say yes, some say no. There has to be some sort of ruling on what's going to prevail. But definitely getting the beneficiary to make the decisions themselves rather than you as the executor who just presents the ideas to them would be a great way as far as I'd see it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, when there's real estate, for example, you know, an executor usually has a 12-month window. I call it the executor year. And, you know, we can always talk about the timing of putting a property on the market. You know, quite often with a rural property, you won't put it on in the middle of summer. You'll wait until it's a bit greener. So things like that. So it's a matter of a few months. So there's some flexibility, I guess, within a confined period to make the decision. It's just when it gets too long that it can be an issue.
Yeah, and when you talk about real estate, it is probably quite unknown, maybe not quite as unknown as something like foreign exchange, because there's a little bit less factors in there. But then you talked about the Royal Commission earlier, like the real estate market in Australia took a massive nosedive after that because all of the banks tightened their lending policies. And there was a lot of fire sales, people panicking, and a lot of properties come on the market. Now we've seen that reverse since then.
Yep.
So as an executive, if you're making the decision on what's the best time to do that and you panicked,
yes,
at a time where the assets went down greatly and then a few months later they're back up again,
yep,
where does the onus lie in that?
That's right. Well, if they didn't get advice, it probably does lie on them. If the beneficiaries wanted to make a big deal out of it, if it was, you know, an inner city property that lost a couple of $100,000 that it wouldn't have otherwise lost.
Yeah.
So an executor, I suppose, needs to make sure that they're doing their own due diligence and getting the professional advice and not just making the decision after reading the paper and talking to their neighbour.
Yeah, and consulting with the beneficiaries again is always great. Another interesting thing that I've come across just this last year, in international money transfers, we've always got to be very wary of countries that have sanctions in place for a whole variety of reasons. And some are blanket sanctions, and some are very specific. And I've got a case at the moment where there's beneficiaries in the Ukraine and Russia.
Yep.
And there are a lot of banks and brokers who won't facilitate the international money transfers there because the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and world organisations have certain sanctions against these countries due to past events.
Yeah.
But talking to one of the brokers on my panel, they do still facilitate it because it's not a blanket, can't send money to these countries. But the tricky bit is any company or individual that has connections to oil and gas, you can't send money to.
Right. Yeah.
And some of the banks in those countries are either owned or affiliated with some of these companies. So I'm having to do work with my panel broker and the executor and the beneficiaries over there to make sure that they hold accounts with banks that aren't affiliated with the gas and oil industries. Then we can send them the funds. But if their account is held at another bank that does, we can't send them funds.
Wow, that's really interesting. And it's probably the first time you've come up against that as well.
I've seen it in the past, but it's the first time it's impacted on beneficiaries.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. Well, I suppose nothing's ever the same, isn't it? We always have everything, every case is always different.
Yeah.
So how do we go about working with you? Because we see the difference in the exchange rate that a bank gets versus a broker, and there's obviously benefit going with a broker, but there wouldn't be much benefit if then the fees that we're paying to get the broker meet the difference.
Most brokers don't charge you a fee. They make their money in the exchange rate, the same way the banks do. And to be perfectly honest, the banks can beat a broker every day of the week if they chose to. Because the brokers generally are clients of the bank, the same way you or a beneficiary is.
Yeah, okay.
So a bank will take a portion. So you've got I'm going to do some imaginary lines here. You've got interbank mid.
Yes.
You've got the bank's wholesale rate.
Yes.
And then you've got the wholesale rate that the banker provides to a broker, which is always going to be lower than the broker's rate. This is generally how a lot of broking firms work.
Yep.
The bank's actual fee to transfer the money is smoke and mirrors. If they're charging you $10 or $30, a lot of people complain about that, but they don't realise, and I'll bring in my computer screen again here. So we've got one here where the equivalent on a $1 million Australian estate is 37,000 US or 56,000 Australian. Now, people grumble and say, oh, the bank's charging me a $30 transfer fee. They don't realise that's smoke and mirrors. You're actually getting charged 56 grand. Yeah. Now, on a deal like this, the broker would probably save you $40,000. That's $40,000 in a estate's pocket or in a beneficiary's pocket that would normally go to bank profits. And as long as deals are over a certain size, and for some organisations or brokers it might be 5,000, some are 15,000. Some just do zero fee, as in transfer fee. It's just whatever they make in the foreign exchange margin. But it's nearly always shown better than the bank's retail rate, which is what the bank shows the majority of their clients. You will generally do better with the brokers than you will with the banks, especially if you don't know how to talk to the banks, how to negotiate with them. Whereas the brokers will be pretty fair right from the start. And I only put brokers on my panel who have proper financial services licenses across the globe and are legitimate organisations. Because that's another thing that people need to be wary of. You can go out on your own, but when you research the financial services licence, is it actually for the entity that you're dealing with, or are they white labelling off someone else? There's been plenty of, I'll call them fly-by-nighters, but some have been around before that eventually might get shut down because they're facilitating money laundering or terrorism fund transfers, knowingly or unknowingly. So you got to make sure that whether it's a bank, and we've seen some banks in recent times come into trouble with this, and some get some pretty huge fines, or a broker, that they have good compliance in place. It's one of the reasons a reputable organisation will ask for evidence of source of funds, which in the case of an estate is quite easy because you've got the estate documents.
Okay, well, that's good to know that it can be as low as 5,000, because it's very rare that, you know, a gift is less than that. So that's a good thing to know. And I suppose the other thing is, not only do we need to shop around, we probably need to shop around through you, because we'll find cowboys otherwise, won't we?
That's why I've set up this. I've basically invented an industry called foreign exchange advocacy. And I stole it from the vendor advocacy model. If you use a vendor advocate, which a lot of wills and estate lawyers use, a vendor advocate to sell the estate property, you don't pay for their service.
No.
The real estate agent has to give up some of their fee and commission to the vendor advocate. And it's the same with me. If someone uses one of my brokers on the panel, my client doesn't pay me. That broker knows they need to split their fee with me, because I've got another dozen brokers who are willing to do that, give a client a fantastic deal, as well as they just need to lose a little bit of their money, because they wouldn't have found the client. And my big thing I love about the industry that I've started, I'm representing the estate or the beneficiary in their best interest. I'm not representing the best interest of a foreign exchange company or a bank.
Well, that's the thing. You've seen all the unethical things that happen, so you're making sure that we're not victims of that.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. I'm tired of, because if you're a beneficiary of an estate, you've lost someone. Whether you were close or not, your world has been impacted in some way, and parasites shouldn't try to feed off that just to get a nice little bonus or commission. There should be more money in your pocket than bank profits or broker profits, because that person left something to you so you could do some good with your life. And that's what my passion is to make. And there's nothing more rewarding than have someone crying on the end of the phone because you've got them an extra $40,000 that they didn't know they were going to have, which a real Australian or a real person anywhere across the globe, that makes a massive impact on their life, more so than what it does for shareholder return on a listed bank or something of that nature.
Love it. Fantastic. So well said.
Thank you.
So We do have time for questions, but I was wondering before I have a close look at what we've got in here, whether there was anything that you think I should have asked you that I haven't asked.
Just have a quick look down my thing. I mean, we touched on duty of care and that any executor has to act in the best interest of beneficiaries. I think we've covered everything. The only thing we haven't covered would be the scams and hacks that we've seen across all industries, and also the legal industry. That when I'm working with clients, yes, there's a certain amount of email correspondence, but when it comes to discussing account numbers, I get that by phone, and I don't ask for the full account number. Jacqui, if you're my beneficiary, I just say, Jacqui, what's your BSB in the last 4 digits of your account number? And then I contact the broker, because you may have already emailed them or spoke to them, and just say, hey, Mr. or Miss Broker, I just want to confirm the account details you have for Jacqui is this BSB and does it end in these 4 digits. The reason for that is if all you ever do is email correspondence and there's a hacker somewhere in the system, they make a lot of money from simply just changing account numbers. And I know you as a law firm, you would always verbally discuss it, whether it's in a Zoom or a Skype, such as what we're going now, or just by telephone if you know the person's voice. Getting that verbal confirmation, not just that visual in an email, is imperative, because if you inherit $1 million and you don't have that verbal confirmation and the hacker gets hold of it, that money's gone.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I think we should really highlight based on the notes I had down.
Yeah, really good point. And it has really been brought to our attention more and more in the last couple of years, particularly with conveyancing. But yeah, also in this respect. And I would hope that most law firms now don't just rely on bank account details in an email. We need to have them handwritten with a signature and the phone verification of the details, which is difficult with overseas beneficiaries because we won't often call them. But so what we'll do is send them a beneficiary authority for them to send us back.
Yeah, I'd always follow it up with a phone call, even if it's the middle of the night. Again, you don't know if that's been intercepted. But I mean, I guess that lesson, you and I know it, but someone who's acting as an executor maybe doesn't know it if they're not in our sort of industry. So it's a really important thing to understand.
Yeah, very much so. All right. So Helen has persisted with us through the whole webinar. Thank you, Helen. A couple of others came in and out. Was there any questions that you had? What I'm going to do is finish the recording and then we can have a chat amongst ourselves. All right. So thank you very much, Tim.
You're welcome.
For your time. And thanks for everyone who's listened in and for those who are getting the replay as well. Hopefully it's really important.
I think they're more than welcome to send both of us any questions they might have, no matter when.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And I was going to say, you had your contact details up on the screen before. Do you want to put those back up for everyone?
Yeah, why not? Let me just bring them up. There we go. So there they are there.
Yep. Really.
And hopefully you can read that there, tim.smith@firstcallforex.com.
Nice and clear. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Nice. Thanks, Jacqui.